50% for all our needs, 20% for savings, and then 30% for our wants.
This is a hard thing for myself. It's a hard thing we see clients go through, and you really have to look at your spending. Every month, I've got an automated transfer that comes in from my checking account to my savings account, moves on a certain day of the month. That's it. Set it and forget it works really well for me. I don't do great with like the one-time, one-off payments.
You want to buy that bigger house. Okay, now you're saving to put money away to that. It is all psychological. Hi, and welcome to Express Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Martinez.
And I'm Lauren Genuardi. And we are coming to you today to talk about savings.
Yeah.
This is a loaded topic. It's probably, I would say, our clients' least favorite topics to talk about.
I think it's everyone's least favorite topics to talk about. And if we think about it, it's more spending, is the issue, right? If you have assigned an amount that you're going to save, then you can then lean into your spending. But we do it backwards. And that's typically because there is a rule for income to be spent, and that's the 50-30-20 rule, where 50% of your income can be spent on all of your needs, 30% on all of your wants, and then 20% for savings. But even as I'm saying it, I know that this is exactly what runs through our minds. Okay, this is everything I need, and then this is everything I want.
Right.
And then that's it, right? Because then we say, well, I have nothing left over.
Right. Well, I can't save.
Of course, right? Because it's not your priority. Right? We need to reverse a little bit that rule, and not just the rule itself, right? It has to be true to us, where instead of saying 50%, 50-30-20, we say 50-20-30, where it's 50% for all our needs, 20% for savings, and then 30% for our wants. What that will allow you to do is make sure your mortgage and all your bills are paid, groceries, all of clothing, right? Everything that you need covered in the first 50%. Then everything you have left over, which should be, or hopefully, right? I know, and it depends on everyone's certain situation, but we'd be hopeful that 50% is left. You take 20% off the top. Then that remaining 30%, there's strategies around that.
Right. I think the first part is, how do you get there? How do you figure out what that 30% is? And I know this is a hard thing for myself. It's a hard thing we see clients go through, and you really have to look at your spending.
Yep.
And you have to get granular. And I hate talking about this. And I can justify anything to myself. I can talk myself into anything. But I had to actually sit down and do this exercise. And I started out, my husband, I talked about this on another podcast. He loves to categorize data. So he's fantastic, because I said, lay it on me. Give me a big data dump, and I'm going to start sorting things. So I took the Excel spreadsheet, and I actually went through and said, okay, what are those fixed expenses? Right. So what are the needs, right? The non-negotiables. I can't not pay the mortgage. Our cars are paid off, but if you had car loans, that would be in there. You have to pay tuition, medicine, life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, those kind of non-negotiables that you have to pay, right? Your utilities in your house, you have to still pay those things. You have to pay property taxes and property insurance, all those good things. So when you look at it, I was assigning what are the fixed costs for us. And as unpleasant as that can be sometimes, you have to really be honest with yourself and say, hey, this is my number. This is my monthly number that goes out and has to go out. It is a non-negotiable. And then when you said that we flip it and we do needs first and then savings, this is key. You have to pay yourself first. After you've paid your non-negotiables and you've accounted for them and allocated and set aside the money for them, you have to pay yourself first, because otherwise you will find yourself left with nothing potentially. So I love a set it and forget it strategy. I am not great at remembering to come in and move a big chunk of money into savings. So I set a goal for the year of what I want to put aside in my savings account. And then I divide that goal every month. And every month I've got an automated transfer that comes in from my checking account to my savings account, moves on a certain day of the month. That's it. Set it and forget it works really well for me. I don't do great with like the one-time, one-off payments. And then you really get into what's left and what are those discretionary items that you want. And as much as I can justify that I beat the things at Target when I walk in, I really don't. When you look at that spending, you're like, hey, well, I could actually cut that. Hey, no one is really watching that subscription that we signed up for. We could probably get rid of that. And I think that's a manageable approach to it, to try to carve out some savings, but also not to pride yourself, right? Because you still have to live life, you still have to have fun, and you still have to make memories and do things with your family. But we don't want it to be where all of the focus is how can I make more money? Because that's not always an option, right? You can't go into your boss and say, I spend a lot, so I would like more to spend. That's not how it works. You have to really work with the income that you have and shift your priorities so that there is some left for you, but you still get to have fun too.
When I think of savings, I also like to assign it to something,
Right.
because exactly what you're stating, you still have to have fun, you still have to enjoy yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean today, correct? So that's kind of more of the want bucket.
Right.
I want to go out for dinner with my friends today. I want to do brunch today, right? As much as we all want to do that today, the savings piece, savings/investment piece is around, okay, I want to take that vacation in a year.
Right.
So as you're saving, you're truly just putting money away for that. You want to buy that bigger house. Okay, now you're saving to put money away to that. It is all psychological.
Absolutely.
What you need to save is to tell yourself what it's for instead of just random. I think too many times, because the so-called emergency fund, right? It's kind of like, is everybody having emergencies all the time, that there's this fund that exists? Right. Yes, there's things that come out of nowhere and they do happen. Of course, that's life. But there are a lot of things that we call emergency fund, like getting new tires. That's not emergency.
Not, no.
You knew it was coming, right?
You just put it off, right?
Correct.
Yes. And I always think of the emergency or rainy day fund, whatever you call it, as I look at it more from the perspective of job loss. That's why I'm always cautioning my clients to build that up, because heaven forbid there was a job loss, then there's not there, that income has gone missing. But there's all these other things that have to be paid every month. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? So I always look at that emergency fund as that. And then some of those things like the roof blew off. Yes, the water heater decided to explode. Those kind of expensive one-time or hopefully one-time items.
I totally get it. I didn't even know the water heater could blow up. Mine just blew up.
Oh no.
That's a whole other podcast. But yes, these things can happen. Right? But again, my water heater was 20 years old.
Right. So at some point, you know it's coming.
Yeah.
It's just when. It's like it's taking time. Yes. When is it going to hit?
I learned that the hard way. But as long as we take the time and set aside that money for whatever our goals are, and those goals can be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years out, 20 years out, but assigning those dollars to each and every one of those categories allows you also to feel fulfilled and success. Raise timing every single one of them.
Right. And you see some progress. And so I think there's a big psychological benefit to that. And I know people handle their savings differently. And some are just like, I have a savings account and I dump into that one savings account. And then other people really like separate accounts for different purposes. And I know you could argue at the end of the day, like it's money, it's savings, whatever, just smash them all together. But I personally, I like to bucket them. I like to see different pots and purposes separated. This is going to be tuition money. I like that to be in a separate account. This is going to be vacation money. I like to see that separate. But not everybody does. Sometimes people like to combine it.
Yeah, there are. That's right. Different strokes for different folks, right? So whatever works for you is what you have to do. And that's why I know there's like an overload of information out there and you're trying to pick, does that one sound better? Does that one sound better? It's not really what sounds better. It's what works for you. So it's testing, okay, let me try it how Lauren does it. And let's see, does that work for me? Or is it another style that works? I like separating it, but I only have 2 buckets, and one is just pure savings. That's to cover any expenses or loss of income or reduced income. And then another one that's more long-term. So if I have a lot of long-term goals, then I'm investing that money.
Right.
That's where I see there's no need to have an overload of savings if you can be investing it knowing I'm not going to use this right now, not this year, not next year. Right. So why am I going to let it just sit there?
Right. That's something that we work with clients and really figuring out, like, what is your emergency level? And it's different for every family based on income, based on expenses, and what each person has going on. But we always try to figure that out. And then when there is that surplus of, hey, we have built this up, and I mean, we know it. We have families, so we understand that there's expensive seasons of life. But when we've got enough in there, you're right. You don't need to just keep building into it. And I mean, cash money markets, high yield savings accounts are better than they have been probably arguably throughout our entire lives, right? So now it's kind of juicy that you're getting 4% in there. But I will say that once you hit that target amount, then that's when you should be talking to your advisor about, now what do I do? Now where can we invest this? And or maybe we've got a house purchase coming in a couple of years, and maybe it makes sense that you do some shorter term treasuries or something like that you figure out. And so once you hit that emergency bucket, then those excess savings, that's really when we can develop a great plan for someone that'll help.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's definitely personalized. As much as we'd love to wave a magic wand and say this is what works for everyone, that's not the case. It will be very dependent on what you're saving for or who you're saving for, right? That's the piece of investing. If I know that I'm set and I'm now inheriting wealth,
right?
Those inheritance accounts are more built around the lifetime or life expectancy of the person I'm inheriting it to. I don't need it to be if I was 70 or 80. I don't need to invest it based on my risk tolerance. I should be investing it based on the risk tolerance of the recipient.
Correct. Unless you had a real strong need for that cash.
Correct.
If you did, then that's when we get fancy and we create a 2-pronged approach where there's a piece that's more conservative for the person that's living and using the money now. And then there's a piece that becomes a little bit more aggressive for that younger generation that stands to inherit it.
So it's all dependent on your situation. So take a look, run different styles, see what works for you. And what works, that's what you're going to have to implement. We hope that helps. Thank you.